Hello everyone. Hello everyone. We have right here of talking about is a document right here of talking about what the source of goals and achievements that I'm sure that we would most of us would like to achieve, especially. But what about writing typing a document whenever it comes to understanding something a little bit more, and especially if you're just trying to thinking about what do you think that they can go very well whenever it comes to if there was a failure that happened. So let's just say that if you were based on what you experienced from a job or anything like that that you were working on, but still that I have right here that right here is that what would you do in case if there was a failure and how would you be able to handle that? And I put on here to think twice before you do, but still you think also. Think about how that process will withstand. So what I mean by that is that that if you're trying to work on something, and let's just say that you want to go ahead and think and just write down, like anybody say that if you're going to be taking down notes of any kind, that you'll go ahead and just jot down some ideas about how you'll be able to handle a situation while you're working, or anything else that you want to kind of keep in mind. And you're thinking too that whenever you do write a letter, or whenever you do write like a little memo, and I guess if you want to kind of call it like a little bit of a draft or a memo about how you'll be able to handle situations to where in case if something goes wrong, or anything that is related to about your work performance, or any sorts of assessments, or any sorts of directions. But still, that how many of us had thought of that to where that you want to go ahead and just write down a little memo, something that you can keep in mind about, in case of something that goes wrong. Then what do you think that memo would say? And I would say that it's like, for withstand, to where in case of the situation for what goes wrong, for what goes wrong, how would we react to that? How would you react to that? So a lot of times that whenever you do apply for a job, or whenever you do think about important task and all that, you want to know too is to where that if you were to be writing this maybe in like a document, or just something to think about, that to where that whenever you do write something that you're going to maybe we kind of call that to where that you start thinking. And maybe if for anybody who's going to be reading any of your documents or anything like that, that what exactly is it to word that are you actually talking to the reader, or are you actually thinking to yourself to word it, what do you think that you can do better just to be able to improve the job performance? But what I mainly want to talk about right here, talk about for failures though, that most employers might even say is toward it that before you're hired for that job, that they're going to ask you toward how you'll be able to handle situations toward it. For anything that goes wrong, what can you do better? Just to be able to do better. For you show better performances, especially. And so, like I think is toward it that I would think that if you're going to be writing any sort of cover letter like this right here, that it's going to include maybe up to 350 characters, paragraphs long. And if you want to just talk, just jot down a few sentences, and it's going to maybe talk about, okay, for what went wrong the last time, what have you learned from that, from that error, and anything else that you want to talk about. But really, that I mainly want to talk about over here of talking about with a document, just to better understand, what failures that occur, and for what, how you'll be able to handle that for the next time. Would most employers ask you to do that? If you're going to be working on a job that are very many employers going to be asking you to go ahead and write an essay about how you'll be able to handle those responsibilities. And everybody else will probably say too, well, the responsibility right here, the responsibility right, I'll go and say that what I'm doing is that I try to think backwards about what happened at the very beginning. What happened at the at the very beginning, right there. I'll go ahead and see if I can correct that spelling right there. But yeah. Anyhow, or just at the beginning. Right there at the very beginning. Anyway, so if you're going to be writing a letter, and let's just say that with that letter that the responsibilities, right there. So yeah, how many of us are going to maybe think about that to where you go ahead and write a letter, and it looks like on there you have 52 words, using the mobile app here, but still that how many of us will think about that to where that if you're going to be applying for a job, that how many employers are going to want to read your responses whenever it comes to how you'll be able to handle a situation. I guess a lot of that is about a job assessment, and and I guess there's a lot of jobs job applications that are going to ask you to complete an assessment, that there's questions and answers, and then of course that they're going to time you on how you respond to a lot of those situations that come up and all that. But sure, it seems like to me that really, if you really just had to be there just to understand what the situation is, but if you want to take the extra time to write a letter about what your experience is, and I'll go and zoom in right here so that way we can all see this right here. But you see right here, talk about what to do in case of a failure. So that's really just something to keep in mind right here, is that how you'll be able to handle that, for any source of failure that comes up while you were working on a job, on a task. And a lot of times, everybody else might say too that you want to set your goals forward and straightforward, and you want to make sure that you're able to complete a task, complete this job, overall, from the overall expectations and all that. But a lot of times, though, that do you really want to think about about the failures, and like some jobs that might even say that if you want to just if it's maybe just about every 6 months or so, that you go ahead and write down a cover letter just talking about how you'll be able to handle the failures. And for anything that goes wrong, anything that might go wrong. And most managers might say that if you think that you want to be honest with a lot of employers, and they'll say that you go ahead and write down a letter about how you'll be able to correspond whenever it comes to a system or a failure, a system, anything that goes wrong, how you'll be able to react to that. And a lot of everybody else might even say that really, do we really even think about a lot of that stuff, such as, okay, what to do, what would you do in case of this happens or in case of that happens? So really, that when we get to a job application most of the time, it sure seems that way, to where that anything new that you need to learn, or any specific training or anything like that that you want to get through. But it sure seems that way, to where that when we think about a job application, know that of course that there's going to be a lot more to it than just asking some general questions and all that. But really, though, that about almost every application and I have felt out that most of the time that they're not going to really be asking you any questions about, to where that, yeah, if there's been any source of failure, how would you be able to handle anything that goes wrong during the job process? And you want to know too that a lot of managers that you want to know that how come that they don't really ask you that question too much of the time. They're going to be asking you questions such as why should we hire you then compared to this other candidate, or the candidate with a little bit more experience, with up to 5 years experience or anything like that. But really though, that the question kind of goes by is toward how are you able to correspond with any failures or for anything that goes wrong, and how you'll be able to take responsibility in correcting anything that goes wrong with a situation that goes wrong, or yeah, like everybody else will probably say too, yeah, well, if you were a little bit tardy, after the first or second, third day or so on a day at work or something like that, but let's just say that if whenever you do get hired onto that job, and then let's just say that just like out of your from your spare time, that if you want to write a letter, and let's just say that letter is going to be to and say that, yeah, well, if you want to be honest with somebody, that how professional are your skills and how are you willing to handle the situation to where that any warning signs or anything like particular caution that comes to your mind whenever it comes to working on a task, and how you'll be able to handle that situation. So what do you think that would go better, for the first, even after the second time, whenever you're working on something? So that's really something to keep in mind, is that, yeah, you want to go ahead and write a letter about what you would do in case something goes wrong. And you're probably thinking that, well, really, something like that may not occur at some point, but let's just say in case if it does, you would know how to react to that situation. So to me, though, that's something that, like everybody else will probably say too, that not really to get anybody really worried about that, but really that there's a lot of applications out there that somebody might ask as to where that really how would you handle that situation in case of something like that goes wrong, and you're probably thinking too that, well, people might even say that, well, really that something like that goes wrong. Let's just say that, yeah, in case of the engine overheats, how are you going to be able to handle that situation? Well, yeah, making sure that the equipment, restart the motor, or yeah, if you had to, reset, the set. I'm like, oh yeah, so really that whenever it comes to situations that come up toward how to be able to handle about a failure. And so in case of anybody that may wonder too, that whenever you do apply for a job, that you don't want to experience any technical failures, you don't want to experience any faults or any failures or anything that goes wrong. But on the other hand too, that you're probably thinking is toward it, yeah, well, if you're going to go and write a paper about that, and what do you think that you would do, and maybe how do you think that you would want to start the sentence out by? And people think is to where, yeah, we'll start the sentence by saying is to where, yep, it's not my fault, okay, yeah, well, it's not, that ain't my problem that it happened, or, something like, well, it was my fault, but still, that I'll go ahead and this is what I'm going to do the next time, or something like that, but still. So really that, a lot of there's a lot of letters that you can maybe practice with, especially, but not very many employers. I don't recall that being on the application to where not very many employers are going to ask you to where that you go ahead and write a transcript about how you'll be able to handle a situation in case of a situation failure. And like anybody say that if there's really a right or wrong answer about that, to where how that managers will see that your experience, if you were tried it. But anyway, that's just something to keep in mind. And thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.